Hey, it's Brad here from CoachParry.com. I've got some super exciting news to share with you before we get into today's podcast. Last week, you may recall, we shared with you how to get your hands on pacing bands for this year's 2024 Comrades Marathon, how you can order them now and get them at the expo. You can pick them up from the Coach Parry stand. Since we put that podcast out, we have literally got hundreds of emails of people asking us, how do we know what our predicted finish time is? The good news is Lindsay and I have had long chats this whole week, and I've been playing around and building a pretty cool calculator that I want to share with you. That is it there, okay? The 2024 Comrades Marathon uprun finish time calculator. And this is how it works. All you need to do is put in your marathon time. So let's say, for example, you ran a 4:12 marathon in the build up to the Comrades this year, and it'll tell you that your predicted finish time is a 10:24:58, which is amazing. If you want to know how to predict your Comrades Marathon finishing time, make sure you stay tuned, because in this episode of Up, I'll share with you exactly how you can get access to this calculator, and then what you can do is order the pacing charts according to your predicted finish time, which is brilliant. So that's all coming up in this week's edition of Up. Welcome on to the next edition of Up. My name is Brad Nadalt. I've got the official Comrades Marathon coach with me once again, Lindsay Parry. Nice to touch base once again. Lindsay, we are inching ever closer to race day. Lots of excitement, but I think the nerves are overtaking the excitement at the moment.
I think so. And Brad and I just had an argument off air about just how long we've got left to Comrades. I say 3 weeks. Brad says we have got 2 weeks and 6 days, because he's not counting Comrades Day, because he says you don't sleep anyway the night for Comrades. So actually day 20 and day 21 are the same thing. Okay.
Same thing. So we're talking about it, but it is just around the corner. And we've been alluding to this podcast and video for a number of weeks now. And it's a little bit about the race route, because obviously with it being an uprun in 2024, it's been a long time since anybody's run an uprun. And a couple of weeks ago, I was up in Johannesburg and I ended up running a long run with a mate of mine at Run Zone, actually. And he's got multiple Comrades. I think he's on number 14 or 15 at the moment. And he was just saying he feels like a novice on the uprun. So here's somebody with a green number already who's forgotten what it's like to run an uprun. So I think this podcast is super, super important, Lindsay. And the two races are vastly different. We've had a couple of downs now. People think they've got the down waxed, but the up is a total different kettle of fish, isn't it?
It's on the same stretch of road, but it is literally couldn't be more different. They have a very different skill set that gets you through. And that's why you do get some people that are much better at the uprun and they run fast on the up. But as a general rule, that is not the case. There's a lot of stuff in the media at the moment around cutoff times, and in particular, a few people talking about the Comrades cutoff times. But I built a really cool little model that models how people should run races. And it's so accurate and so useful for many races that we recommend and tell people how to run for. But the reality is that if you run the uprun to the ideal strategy, which is to say that you run a given proportion slower on the ups than you do faster on the downs, than you do, and the pace that you run on the flats, which aren't so many at Comrades. But when you build that model, there is 1,700 meters of climbing, and there's just short of 1,000 meters of down. So if you build that model, you are going to be between 4 and 7 minutes slower on your goal time. So if you throw into that calculator 8 hours, it's going to come back at you with I think it's 8:05 high, call it 8:06. And so what that means is that when you run Comrades, you actually have to break the rules a little bit, because somewhere along the line, you've got to make that time up. And that means that you have to make the decision between running the uphills slightly harder than you should, or you've got to run the downs much quicker than you otherwise would. But somewhere there's a compromise. And of course, the debate is around the cutoffs, and people should be given more time to get through certain points. But the reality is is that you are going to be forced to run a little bit quicker at the beginning than you possibly should, but somewhere along the line you have to. And Brad, that is a lot of words just to say that's why I think it's important that we go through the route in a fair bit of detail so that people can get an idea of what they are getting themselves in for.
Yeah, and Lindsay, I wanted to break it up into bite-sized pieces because that's probably the best way to approach Comrades. And then we can talk a little bit about once we've broken the route up. And I thought of doing it in almost thirds. So from the start to the top of Bothas Hill, then from the top of Bothas Hill to the top of Umlaas Road, and then from Umlaas Road to the finish. And then once we've broken down the route and you've walked through each of those three segments, we can talk about the best way to approach them from how do you actually run them on race day. So I'm going to hand it over to you. The first half or the first third of Comrades, I mean, I thought, and this isn't to scare the novices or scare people that haven't done an up run, but I remember my first down run, and the first half of the down run, I can clearly remember saying that was the hardest marathon I'd ever run. And that was until I ran the up run, because the first half of the up run is frightening, and particularly the first third. I mean, from the start to the top of Bothas Hill is practically all the way up. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so it is a slow poison, and the first 36 kilometers of the Up Comrades literally is one of the unique challenges in road running. The vast majority of those 1,700 meters are actually climbed in that first 36 kilometers. So let's go through it and talk you through how the race goes. We're obviously going to talk about the actual start in detail either next week or the week after's podcast. We'll see how we go and what we need to talk about. But for this week, you start and you've got about 800 meters before you run up onto the highway. So the cool thing about the Up Comrades is that it does open up. The roads are quite wide, but then very quickly you get reminded we are here for the up run. And so you get onto the highway. It's rolling, but it's tending towards up. And you'll then get to Tollgate Bridge, which is plus minus 5 kilometers along the route. But again, that's just another little reminder that we are definitely here for the up run. And then you're going to make your way to the Mayville off-ramp down to 45th Cutting and into Sherwood. Now, what's important here is that is one of the big five on the way down, but it is not one of the big five on the way up. But it is quite a significant climb. It's also one of the last climbs for the next stretch that's actually got a corresponding down. So when you go over 45th Cutting, the nice thing there is that we do have a little bit of a downhill on the other side. And then we start to climb up towards Sherwood and Sherwood Bridge. Now, it's important to just note that there are going to be, or are currently, roadworks there. And where that is normally 4 lanes, we're going to be moved down to 2 lanes. Okay, so that's important to know because there is going to be a little bit of a bottleneck at that point. It should be starting to get a little bit light, and they will definitely provide some external lighting just to make sure, but be careful through that section. I think that's the most important thing. You're then going to move into Westville. Now, Westville is a long, slow poison as you go past the 14, 15, 16 kilometer mark, and there is some respite, but not much. So you get a few gentle downhills, but for the most part, that is just climbing up until you get to Cowie's Hill. Now, Cowie's Hill is officially the first of the big 5 on the up run, and that is the gateway to Pinetown. And for a lot of people now, it really will be starting to get light, and the sun is coming up. It's starting to. It's not that it's ever really cold on the up run, except for the back markers in Maritzburg sometimes, but it's certainly starting to get quite warm around here. And then you're going to drop down Cowie's Hill, so you get a little bit of respite into Pinetown. And the theme is fairly consistent because although it's flat-ish in Pinetown, it's still tending mostly upwards. Okay? As we move away from Durban, we are just going up. You'll get to the end of Pinetown, and that's around about the 21, 2K mark, somewhere around there. And then we hit Fields Hill. And our Fields Hill is a monster of a climb. It is long. Only the very beginning bit is quite steep. So it's not the steepest of the climbs at Comrades, but it is long and it goes on for just about 3 kilometers. So this is kind of where the race is already starting to take its toll mentally and physically, because you just start to wonder to yourself, like, how much more can you be expected to run up? When you get to the top of Fields Hill and head into first Everton and then into, or over the bridge at Everton, then into Kloof, it's flat-ish. Again, nothing is flat. So we are going to do a little bit of up running, cross over the highway again, and then you're going to be heading towards Winston Park. And that is actually a bit of a significant pull that takes you up past Winston Park, and then you are into Hillcrest, one of the best spectator spots in any race anywhere in the world. And it's probably the only flat section that you're going to run at Comrades on Sunday, the 9th of June. You even get a nice little downhill for about 400 meters that will then take you down to the third of the big five, and that is Bothers Hill. Now, most people don't really worry about Bothers Hill, and they don't think it's much. And I think that's possibly because it's so short, but it really is steep. And I think it may be the steepest route on the Comrades, the steepest hill on the Comrades route. And you certainly know that you are in a dogfight when you are running, or in most people's case, walking up Bothers Hill. But that then takes you beyond the 36K mark, Brad. And what you can then, hand on your heart, say is that you've done most of the hardest marathon you're ever going to do, and that a lot of what is to come, not all, but a lot, is downhill.
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. And we'll talk about how to actually attack that first third in just a moment. We ran a fairly interesting poll on this YouTube channel a couple of weeks ago, just asking everybody who watches the channel which of the big five hills they fear the most. And the stats to me were quite interesting, because obviously I have my opinion of which ones I find the hardest, but I would have thought that it would have been either Fields Hill or Inchunga as the two really tough ones. But for the vast majority of people, it's Polly Shorts, which is quite interesting. But you can't discount the damage that a hill like Fields Hill does early on, and then in the second third, if you'd like, Inchunga. And that's what I wanted you to run through now. Was Inchunga is tough. It is part of a difficult part of the race, because you get there and you've done a lot of hard work. But from the top of Bothers Hill, talk us through the stretch into Drummond, Inchunga, and then up to Umlaas Road.
Look, one of the things you're going to hear a lot of once you leave Bothers Hill and get to the Kersney Boys, is a lot of people are going to shout it's downhill from now on. And a lot of well-meaning people on the side of the road at Comrades, but they're not the most truthful bunch, because there's still quite a lot of climbing to come. But there is some real relief from the climbing that starts now, from 36 all the way to just about 43 kilometers, or just over 43 kilometers at halfway. It's not downhill all the way. Sorry, that's just a point that I want to make. Although most of it is downhill, there's definitely some relief. You must take advantage of that. You don't go down for very long before you get to Alveston Mast, and that's just a little climb. And that's kind of at the point where you start to wonder if you're going crazy, because everyone tells you it's downhill from Bothers Hill into halfway, but it's not a steep climb, it's not a long climb, but it does play with your head, which is why I find it very important to mention that. After Alveston, you really do have quite a lot of downhill, and then you must make sure that you pay homage to Arthur's Seat. Go and put your flower down there. At the very least, you must tip your hat as you get to Arthur's Seat just before halfway. Otherwise, you are going to get bad luck in the second half of the race. So to ensure the good luck, stop, put a flower down, and then keep going on your merry way into halfway. Now, from halfway, you get the climb that gives me the most anxiety, and it certainly hurts me the most on the up run, and that is the mighty Nchanga. It is pretty steep in patches, and it's a long climb. I mean, it takes you from, it's not climbing all the way. So the first bit of that climb, again, around about three-ish Ks, is unrelenting and hard. And then there's still a few lumps before you really get done with the climbing at about 50 Ks. So at about 50 Ks, you can just start to feel like, okay, I'm there. I'm pretty much done with the climbing. And then there's just one more drag along the highway that will take you to the Nachel Dam turnoff. So when you see the Nachel Dam turnoff, which also happens to be on probably the hottest part of the route, right next to the highway, nothing to see. It's probably the quietest spectator spot all the way along the route. And then you get to Nachel Dam and the running gets considerably easier. And then you'll get to Cato Ridge, which is another fantastic spectator spot. Loads of people there cheering you on, getting you going, getting you moving. But largely really good running through these sections, like rolling, but tending mostly to down. From Cato Ridge, at Cato Ridge, you move to the left-hand side of the highway. Now we're still running along the highway, but we are definitely running down, leaving Cato Ridge, and it's a nice gradient. I think that's an important thing to say here, is that all these downs that I'm mentioning in the second half, they are long and they are gradual, and you can really just get into a rhythm and focus on running quite nicely. You'll move back over to the right-hand side of the highway, down towards the chicken farms. And as you get to the chicken farms, then you're approaching Camperdown, you just get another bit of a gentle pull that takes you up. The road forces you right, and then into Camperdown, another one of those hallelujah spectator spots, thick with people. They've got to put barricades up along the side of the road there, and it's just really super festive. Plus, in your mind, you know that just out of town, just out of Camperdown, you're going to get to Umlaas Road. When you get to Umlaas Road, you've got just over 21 Ks left to go. You're officially at the highest point on the Comrades route. And if someone says to you from here, it's downhill from here, they're being geographically and scientifically correct, because Maritzburg is lower down than where you are now, but the climbing is not yet done.
They're still lying. They're still lying. That is the truth. It does get a bit easier, although you still do need to be wary of the last big one, which is the hill that everyone fears, apparently, on our YouTube channel, and that is Polly Shorts. That's still to come in that final third. Lindsay, talk us through the final stretch into the finish.
Yeah, so from Umlaas Road, truly the best running. And that, we're going to talk strategy just now, but that has to factor into your strategies, just knowing that from Umlaas Road, you've got, again, very nice gradual running all the way down to the Lynn Park turnoff, which is also known as 10 Mile Bridge, or 16 Ks to go. But with the new route, is probably going to be closer to 15 Ks to go to the finish. That is all glorious running. It's really just a gradient that is nice to run on, even if your legs are sore and tired. From 10 Mile Bridge, or once you've crossed under the highway, you get a long, quite steep downhill that'll take you to Little Polly's. Now, the way you'll know you're on Little Polly's is that you will think to yourself, oh, gee, Polly Shorts isn't that bad. Okay, so that's how you'll know that you are on Little Polly's, and you've still got about 11 kilometers to go before you get to the end of Comrades. You'll go over Little Polly's, and then there'll be still quite a considerable piece of downhill running, and then you will get to Polly Shorts, and then you'll know that you're on Polly Shorts. Now, there's a good reason for people to fear Polly Shorts. Between Bothas and Polly's, those are the two steepest hills on the course. They are not the longest of the big fives, okay? And obviously, Polly Shorts comes really late in the race, and that's actually its unique challenge. It is steep, not too long, but it comes very deep in the race. And so it's going to start at approximately 9Ks left to go, and it's going to end with just over 7 kilometers left to go. So that's its unique challenge. Once you get over there, we're in slightly new territory because it's a different finish to what we had in 2019. I don't know the exact details of that finish, unfortunately, but come and listen to us at the Comrades Expo. We will have that exact detail with some maps, but it isn't going to include Gladys and Zini anymore. So you're going to get off the back of Polly Shorts, and much like the older finishes of Comrades, the pre-2017 finishes, you are going to roll but dead down. So there's some gentle rollers that are taking you down into Pietermaritzburg. Then you start to make your way through Uribe to the right and making your way towards the highway and Allen Patton into what used to be Connacht Road, but is now going to be called Comrades Road, as you run past Comrades House to the traffic circle in front of the race course, and boom, straight in to the finish area. So we're not, if you have done the up run, we're not going to be going around the back and coming in from the side of the race course. All of that stuff's going to be used for parking and really cleared that area up for parking. But yeah, I think in a nutshell, Brad, those last 7Ks are going to be much easier, very little climbing. As always, whenever you go and run anywhere in South Africa, it's not all going to be downhill, but it's almost all going to be downhill.
Yeah, and the nice thing is the folks in Pietermaritzburg generally come out too and support. So there's always a lot of crowd support from the top of parties all the way to the finish as well, which is great, especially when you do need it. Lindsay, let's talk a little bit about how you attack Comrades. And I use the word attack quite loosely because you don't want to attack Comrades in the first half, that's for sure. Because if you attack Comrades in the first half, it's going to attack you back and then some in the second. What's the best way to approach this? And I'm guessing it's slightly different for the different sort of ability. So someone who's running a silver would approach it slightly radically different to somebody who's possibly hoping for an 11:45 finish, for example.
Absolutely, and I'm glad.
We'll get back to this week's episode in just a moment, but I said to you at the start that I have got a pretty cool tool to share with you, the 2024 Comrades Marathon Up Run Finish Time Calculator. All you need to do is plug your marathon time in. If you want to get access to this, all you need to do is head over to coachparry.com/time, and you can check it out. You can also scan the QR code that's on screen right now. That's coachparry.com/time. So easy to use. All you need to do is put your best marathon time in the last 12 months into this calculator, and it'll tell you what your predicted Comrades Marathon finish time is. So let's say, for example, you ran a 3:50, let's call it a 3:56 marathon, right? It'll tell you that your predicted Comrades Marathon finish time this year, we've taken into account the slightly shorter route as well, 9:45:17. And that is amazing because that then allows you to create your own pacing band for a 9:45 Comrades. All you need to do is head over to coachparry.com/time. You can scan the QR code on screen right now as well. Once you've worked out what your predicted finish time is on that page, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll be able to purchase your Comrades Marathon pacing band, which you can then pick up at the Coach Parry stand at the Expo in Durban this year as well. So go check it out, coachparry.com/time, for somebody who's possibly hoping for an 11:45 finish, for example.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you clarified that use of the word attack, Brad, because when you started talking and said we're going to tell you how to attack the first third, I took umbrage to the use of the word attack. A bit like when Bruce Fordyce was interviewed on the side of the road when Shvetsov had smashed his record, and the commentator shoved a camera in Bruce's face and he said, "Bruce, how do you feel about the fact that your record has just been smashed?" And Bruce was like, "Well, I'm not sure I appreciate the use of the word smashed in that sentence." Yeah. So the reality is you don't. You want to do the opposite of attack. Now, I am going to go back to, and this is why I said it at the start, is you've got to be quite careful when you plan your race, because you do want to go as conservatively as you can in the first 36 Ks, but you've also got to bear in mind that in order to run the medal that you are setting out to run, that we do need to run slightly, and I mean slightly faster on the ups and on the downs. Okay, so that is how we want to break down the race. And you're absolutely right that it changes as we move further back in the field because of the time that we lose on the start line. So to run your time, you've got to adjust and kind of allow for that time. We've got to catch up the time you lose to get over the start mat, but we want to be careful about when and how aggressively we catch that time up. Okay, so that's really what I want to say about that. And I think the first 36 Ks of the Comrades are not the place to try and make up that lost time. So in the first 36 Ks, you're going to be quite far behind the schedule that you've set yourself. And I think that's an important thing to know. And you want to be conservative. When you get to Fields Hill, what you'll hopefully experience is that you feel good at Fields Hill because it's not the steepest climb around. You are fit. You're going to be fresh from having done tons of training. But what's key is that you're not going to take advantage of that fitness. Okay. That is the absolute truth. So to put that into perspective, what does that mean? Well, you probably want to be going up Fields Hill in the region of 20 for the very fast runners that do loads of mileage, about 20 seconds to around 40 to 45 seconds per K slower than your planned overall average towards the back end of the field. But you really want to do these calculations, do them properly, and then you want to adjust those for the fact that we do need to catch up a little bit of time and do things properly. Look, Brad, I think this is probably a very good time to say that we have done those calculations and we will be and are currently selling pacing charts that will help you to know exactly how to run each section. But the first 36 Ks needs to be your most conservative with taking into account that little bit of faster than if it was a race that had 1,700 meters of up and 1,700 meters of down, then it would be a perfect ratio. But unfortunately, it's not. So we're going to go teeny bit faster, but just enough so that we conserve our strength through the first 36 Ks of Comrades.
Yeah, Lindsay, I wanted to just touch on those pacing bands because, as you said, we've done those calculations, and we have been talking about it the last few weeks here on the podcast. You can order a custom one right now. So using our sort of finish time predictor with that formula that you created, and if you go over to coachparry.com/time right now, I'll pop the link in the description to that as well. You can also scan the QR code that's on screen right now, and you can work out what your predicted Comrades finish time is by your marathon time. So that's the first thing, is making sure you're on the correct goal. We're going to talk about that in a coming week as well, just to make sure 100% sure that you do that correctly, but then taking a pacing chart that's appropriate to that goal. Tell us a little bit about, before we get on to the rest of the route, tell us a little bit, because we've had one or two questions, and we will be at the expo too, at the Coach Parry stand, to answer these sorts of questions. The entire team will be there. But talk us through a little bit about how do we use those pacing bands, because we have had one or two of those questions, and we can go into more detail at the expo. But just in broad strokes, what is the purpose of the pacing band, and how should you use it on race day?
Yeah, and it's exactly as I'm saying now, is that it gives you target times to get to specific points, and it takes into account the profile along the way to get you there. Okay, and that's why it's important to come and buy the charts, or you can order them and come and collect the charts at the expo, but then also to have a chat about what does that mean in terms of, in real terms, like what is the physical minutes per K up the hills, on the downs, etc. And that's the part that will help you with. But really what the pacing chart is there for is to stop you having to continually do calculations, so that you know that when I get to Westville, I need to get there at X time. When I get to Pinetown, I want to be there at X time. When I get to Hillcrest, I want to be there at X time. When I go through halfway, I want to go through halfway in this little band of time. So that is literally how you use them, and they're designed to then help to guide you to go easier through the first part of the course, and then save energy for the latter parts. So really what's so important about Comrades is that it is a long day out. There are other elements like the heat, and there are emotive things. There's emotions at play. There's mental fatigue that kicks in. And that's why on the up run, more people run negative splits than they do on the down run. But the negative splits still aren't anywhere near as big as one would expect them to be. And that is because some of those things do come into play, but still, we mustn't, even though we know that we're not going to run as fast as we'd like to in the second half, that we mustn't ignore the principles, because part of the reason why we can't run fast in the second half is because that's often how we set ourselves up in the first 36 Ks by having gone too fast.
Yeah, Lindsay, just on those pacing bands too, I think it's important to say that those are where you want to be about. It's not like that's the deadline and you've got to try and get as far ahead of those numbers as possible, because that is a quick way to failure too.
Yeah, so the way that I like people to use those pacing charts is to use the charts to hold you back in the first almost 2/3 really. So even through halfway and to the top of Nchanga, let the pacing charts hold you back a little. And then from about 50 Ks, so 36 Ks to go, to about 11, 12 Ks to go, that's the section where if you're feeling good, it's okay to get ahead of that pacing chart and buy yourself a little bit of time, if you like, and make the closing 10 kilometers that little bit more comfortable, and take the sting out of both this hill, because then you can afford to go even slower or even walk large sections of both this hill. So that's kind of how I encourage people to use those pacing bands.
Cool. Let's talk about the second thirds and the final stretch, sort of how to run those. You've spoken to the top of fields and both is. Let's talk about, once you've gotten over that, you've run within yourself, you're feeling good, what now?
Yeah. So once you get to top of both this hill, and even if you're not feeling so good, Brad, then we do have some downhill coming up, and we want to use that downhill just to improve our average pace quite a little bit. I'm going to say it again because it's just so important. You may even run that downhill section a little bit faster, but you don't want to be pushing. And I think, again, that's the key. Use the downhill both to recover and to get back some time, but don't wreck your legs by powering into halfway. Okay, you're going to let gravity do its thing. You don't need to push to get back time. You're going to go through halfway, and as I said in my talk, you're then going to hit Nchanga, which for me is the hardest of the big five. And a run walk strategy for most medals is going to really do you well there. Both of my up silvers have included 2 walk breaks on Nchanga. Caroline Cherry, who was Caroline Wassman at the time of winning, when she won Comrades, she used to tell me when she saw the Indian painted onto the side of the wall as you're going up Nchanga, that was her walk break. And of course, it got the commentators absolutely wild, because they thought, oh, that's it, Caroline's walking, she's in trouble. But she had a little walk break there to galvanize herself mentally for the good parts that were coming up ahead. So in Nchanga, we're going to do a bit of a run walk strategy through there. And then once you get to the 50K mark, you are going to have long stretches of gradual downs with some ups, of course, but you've got these long gradual downs. And now this is what I call the moving section of the race. This is where, if you've played it right, if you tired but strong, your legs are a bit sore but strong, this is the section where you can now start getting ahead of your pacing chart, get ahead of the cutoffs, start taking some pressure off yourself for that final quarter of the race. And that kind of plays largely all the way through until you get to Umlaas Road. You've really only got the pull up to the chicken farms and Umlaas Road that'll break that momentum a little bit. But you should be starting to feel really positive about the fact that you're going to get close to the time you've set yourself, although you will be getting tired and grumpy and starting to question, like, you know, what was I thinking? Why am I doing this? Who said this was going to be fun, etc., etc. Those are going to start around there, but at least you like starting to almost get into not single digits, into teenage digits, and that makes you feel like it's a very biteable chunk that's coming up to get you to the finish.
Yeah, Lindsay, I also think it's important to say that the downs in that like final or the second half, final third of the Comrades Up run are very different to the down runs downhills. Because obviously there's been a lot more damage. And I found that, I don't know if it's just because I'm a bigger guy, but it wasn't a case of that I had to run faster. It's just that if you save enough in the tank, you just need to run. Like it's actually really nice, comfortable running if you can run at that point in the race. So if you behave in the first 2/3, geez, you can make up lots of time in the final third.
Yeah, and I'm talking about being sore, but it's not the same sore as the down run. You know, it's not that sore that really feels like you've been beaten up. It's more the sore that you've been running for quite a long time, but it's not deep pain. And the gradients, and I said it before, the gradients are such that they don't make the sore worse. So you actually just feel like you're in a glorious stage of, I'm sore, but I can do this. I'm going to get to what I set out to do. And it's just really cool that and I mean, I'm going to jump past Umlaas Road because that's the best part. It's like once you leave Umlaas Road for the next sort of 8 kilometers, that's what you're faced with, is just this amazing running. And then when you get to 11 Ks to go, you hit little pollies. It's tough, but you go like, oh, pollies wasn't so bad. And you've done Comrades how many times, but you still go, oh, pollies wasn't so bad, because your brain just doesn't work properly that late in the race. And then you go down the other side and then you hit pollies and go, oh, that's why pollies wasn't so bad. I haven't done it yet. But again, if you've taken advantage of that previous 10, 15 kilometers, then when you get to pollies, yes, it's hard, but you can actually just take your time up there and make it actually a lot easier than it is, because you can literally just run, walk 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, get yourself to the top, get over the top. And, you know, here's a stat that'll just let you know how good the running is once you get over the top of the up run. And that's that nobody has lost the up run when they have gotten to the top of poly shorts first. And that's because once you hit those downs, again, they are just so runnable. So even tired, even sore, you can run them and enjoy them.
So what you're saying is no one's allowed to pass you once you've gone over pollies. Is that what you're saying to us?
Exactly. You fight for your position once you've gone over pollies.
All right. Talk to us a little bit about the final run into the finish. I mean, like you said, it's really good running. And again, if you've behaved in that first third, first 2/3, it's a really enjoyable run in from the top of pollies.
Yeah. So from personal experience, again, you will do at pollies what you need to do. So I've had a silver that I knew I had very little time to waste, and the running is good enough that whatever speed you need to run at, you will run it. And that goes for people who get through that finishes cutoff. It goes for the Bull Roans. It goes for your own unique time. And if you get over the top of pollies and you've got time to play with, because I've had that experience too, you typically tend to use it, because again, the running is easier. But if there isn't this rush to get to the finish or pressure to get to the finish, you are pretty tired now. You've certainly had enough of running uphill. I mean, that's the one key feature I can tell you about poly shorts, is that when you go up polished shorts, you literally are thinking to yourself, and your muscles are telling you loudly that we cannot go uphill much more. Okay. And so therefore, when you get over polished, you will do what you need to do. And that's the beauty of it. Again, long downhill stretches. I've spoken about the little lumps that are along the way, but you've in those sort of 7Ks, you've got long downhill stretches. You can really just get into a groove, plug in, switch off a little bit, and start imagining what it's going to be like to finish the Comrades. Let yourself drift off to a happy place. But if you're under pressure and you need to finish, you can keep yourself in the moment, and you can use those downs to get to the finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you hit the grass at the finish and you've still got something left in the tank, that's when you can empty it and you can put foot down and go.
That's exactly it. Hold back, hold back, hold back.
Until the grass. Lindsay, I don't know if there's anything else to add there. That was amazing. I have definitely got the uprun spirit in me. I'm looking forward to being there. And I think a lot of people, I don't know if that would have made people more nervous or settled some nerves, but I think it's always good to go in with eyes wide open, knowing what to expect. And as my late mom always used to say, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. And that's exactly the way you have to approach the Comrades Marathon uprun.
Yeah, no, you've summed it up perfectly well there. All that's left now is, I think, 2 more pods, and for everybody to come and say hello to us at the expo.
Yeah, I'm super excited, Lindsay. We've had a lot of people pre-order their pace bands. If you haven't got yours yet, all you need to do is head over to coachparry.com/pace. I'll pop the link into the description for that as well. You can also scan the QR code that's on screen right now, and you can go and grab your pace band and then just come and collect it at the expo in Durban. We're going to be there all 3 days in the build-up. Looking forward to it. It's my happy time. I just love being around the expo and seeing everybody and the nerves and the excitement. It's always a great place to be in Durban, and we look forward to catching up with you then. Lindsay, parting shot from you.
Yeah, guys, we are 3 weeks out. I think I say a few things quite often in these podcasts, so I'm going to repeat some of them again. 68% of the people who don't finish Comrades started with an injury. So if you are sore, take some time off, treat it like your house is burning down, get to a physio, have yourself sorted out. And then, if there's another saying that I can attribute to these final weeks of final 3 weeks, it's you can't get hurt. You can only get hurt in the run that you do. So if you are feeling really tired, if this taper has come at just the right time for you, then don't be shy to leave out 1 or 2 workouts between now and Comrades. You can't get injured in the run you didn't do.
And now's not the time, as I said, I think in last week's or the week before, to take up things like paddle, or like my brother, to be playing golf and then stepping in a hole. Make sure you find the fairway if you are going to play golf. That's the truth of it. You don't want to be looking for your ball in the dongas, because that's when you do damage to your ankles, like my brother did just last weekend. So he's in for an interesting Comrades, Lindsay. He's definitely putting his physio's kids through school at the moment, which is a good thing. As always, Lindsay, thanks for your time. We look forward to catching up again next week.
Brilliant. Cheers, Brad.